Hello, friends, and namaste. Welcome to yet another session of Mahabharata Myths. Over the past 10 weeks, we have been telecasting episodes wherein we discuss various myths and misconceptions related to the greatest epic on the earth. So, we dealt with myths related to Draupadi, related to Duryodhana, related to Karna, related to Shakuni, Arjuna, and almost all the great characters of the epic. So, now we are at the end of this series. This is the last show of this particular series. Of course, we'll be back with more series on the Mahabharata and other Puranas. So, in this last episode, we are going to deal with a very interesting myth. So, before we proceed, so it's time to welcome Pranshu, my fellow co-host. We both have been together running these sessions all these days. And we are also going to bring out a book on Mahabharata myths. All the 18 myths that we covered, we are going to come out with a book on all the myths. We're going to explain them in detail. So hopefully in the forthcoming weeks, the book would be out. A special welcome to Gaurav Tiwari of Sutradhar. So Sutradhar has joined with us, and together we are working to try and promote our culture, our heritage, so that stories related to our epics and Puranas would be known throughout the world. So through these shows, our aim is to reach out to everyone, especially to young people who are interested to know about our Puranas, especially the Mahabharata. So now in the Mahabharata, people would have seen on TV shows, on movies, and on other places where unfortunately there have been some distortions due to the demand of the medium. For example, for a TV show, the script has to be in such a way that the show must run, the show must become popular, there must be a lot of action. So this is why some script writers make some changes. So unfortunately, they change the meaning of the story. So we are trying to bring out the real story so that we can people can know what exactly is happening. So that's the purpose behind this particular series. So once again, Pranshu, thank you for being there from the beginning. And Gaurav, thank you so much for joining and thank you for your support. So together, we hope to have more such shows in the future. So we have already covered 17 myths related to the Mahabharata. It's time to go to the next myth, the last myth in this series. Now, this myth is related to Barbaric or Barbarica, the son of Gatotkacha. Now, the myth is that Gatotkacha's son Barbarica was the greatest warrior in the Mahabharata. So, the story is like this, that Barbarica was such a great warrior that whichever side he would go on, that side would go on to win. So this is why the story is that Krishna went to Barbarica and asked him to sacrifice himself. Because had he fought for the Kauravas, the Pandavas would have lost. So he asked Barbaric to sacrifice himself, and Barbaric sacrifices himself by cutting off his head, and his head sits and watches the entire war. So apart from those who listen to Gitopadesha, that is Arjuna and then Sanjaya and Dhritarashtra, it is said that even Barbarica also listened to the Bhagavad Gita rendition. So now, is this a fact? Is this a myth? The fact is that there is no mention of Barbaric in the Mahabharata. So this is a bit surprising because Barbarica, the legend of Barbarica is quite popular, but yet in the Mahabharata, in the book written by Vedavyasa and its various editions, we find that the name of Barbarica is not mentioned anywhere. In fact, the son of Gatotkacha is Anjana Parva. So this is the text from the Drona Parva, from Gatotkacha Vada Parva. So it says that Drona's son, who is Ashwathama, he kills Anjana Parva, the son of Bhima's son. So Gatotkacha's son is Anjana Parva as per the Mahabharata. So then, where did the story of the Barbarica come from? Who is Barbarica? Was he really there? Why is he not mentioned in the Mahabharata? Was he such a great warrior? So we'll go through that in the next few minutes, and I request now Pransu to take over and tell us all about that.
So this is actually a very important misconception which is arose from the folk legends. So basically, Barbarik, as a character, which actually comes from, of course, Skand Puran. He is there shown as a son of Ghatotkach in Skand Puran, but not in Mahabharat himself itself. And this is a part of the whole uh, mythography which people start constructing around Mahabharat. Mahabharat is a very important tale it is very much close to our culture. Literally everything says from the time of the Kauravas and Pandavas. Everything, basically every kingdom, every part of India, the resonation of ancient stories start with from the times of Mahabharata. So they always try to connect their founders, their famous heroes, or somehow they want to have that connect to the Mahabharata itself. So not only Barbary, but across India and abroad, there are a series of warriors which are in the same role as Barbaric, where they say that this is one of the great warriors, our great warrior. There's a great king of Nepal, Yelambar, and he was going to Mahabharat, but Krishna said that, asked him, which side are you going to fight on? And he said that I will fight on the side which is losing. So Krishna said, oh, because of him, if he starts fighting on the side which is losing, then they will start winning. Then he will switch sides. War will continue endlessly. And so Yalambar was Krishna kills Yalambar, and his head basically uh, watches the whole of the Mahabharata, the story of Mahabharata, which is the same story as Barbaric. Barbaric story has actually in it some other misconceptions also. It starts off with basically uh, the story saying that everybody says who's the greatest warrior, and so Bhisham basically says I can kill everybody and in this legend, the in this misconception, the durations change. Everybody says I can kill everybody in these many days. Even Arjun says that I can kill everybody in 24 days. Karn says I can do it in 21 days, and so on and so forth. But that basically is incorrect, because in Mahabharat we know that Duryodhan did ask that question, and the Kaurav warriors gave their various suggestions. The Pandav warriors were asked the same question by Yudhishthir, and the Arjun said, "Oh, we can end the war in minutes. You are Dharmaraj. You are son of Yamaraj himself. You look at anger, the uh, whole Kaurav army will evaporate." And Arjun said, "I have divine weapons. Within seconds, I can finish everything off. We will fight the war as humans will fight the war, and we will fight it and win it with our nar, with as a purusharth, as our own um, as the our own effort, not through them and divine weapons or something like that." They did use divine weapons during the war when the other side uses the divine weapons, but they did not use them to kill. Arjun actually, this is a very important point from the very beginning. Arjun illustrates is that we will fight the war together. He names his 23 warriors who basically are top, who have been trained very well, who have been fighting very well. They have basically all the confidence in their team. He mentions the team and that we will fight and we will protect each other, and in that protecting our army, if we kill the other side, so be it. So this is a very fundamental concept which starts from the Yudhishthir actually talking about it with with Nahush also. It's about basically uh, fighting without anger, fighting with Sodharm. Fighting for Dharm does not have the concept of anger in it. Yes, during the battlefield and everything, when they're fighting each other and they get hurt or something, so Bhim screams in anger and does and shoots arrows and all those. That is human reactions, because, and this is again illustrating the war was fought by humans, not by aliens or devas or himself. It was basically the effort from that. That was from very beginning. Even Duryodhan said, when Dhritarashtra said, how can we fight? They are sons of God, we cannot fight them at all. And Duryodhan says, gods will not interfere in human affairs. We will fight. The war will be done. That's one of the reasons how he convinces Dhritarashtra to allow the war to go through, is that he himself knows that Pandavas will not use their divine weapons ruthlessly. He also knows that if we fight the war as humans, everybody has an equal chance of winning, and that's what he illustrates to Dhritarashtra. Now, coming back to it, the start of this epic, Barbary, can have this mini story which is there in Mahabharata, which is that everybody says, I want to fight the war and everything, which shows Kauravas said, I will, and Arjun said, we will. And that's the concept. You have a team on one side and you have individual efforts on the other side. Everybody seeking glory on the Kaurav side, Pandavas working to work together to win the war. The only one who basically threatened the Pandav throughout the 18 days of war was Shalya. The morning Shalya took command, he pledged all the Kaurav warriors, nobody will fight individual battles. Nobody will do that. Everybody will fight together as a team. If they fight for individual glory, then five Mahapatak and five Upapatak सबको लगेंगे. Everybody will get the worst of the story. So Shalya, uh, that's what actually is illustrated by Yudhishthir saying, "I fought, I have swam the oceans called Drona and Bhisham and Drona, but in the Gopad, in the cow's hoof water hole, or called Shalya, we might sink." And which again illustrates teamwork is the very important part. Now, that is the lesson which is there. Now, let's break the myth. Barbarik, the second part of the Barbarik story is that Barbarik says that I can be. So, Barbarik story comes out from a human aspect also, that we want to associate our great kings also. The second part of it is another myth, which we already discussed. Sanjay was on the battlefield throughout the war. Sanjay was live commentator. He went back and then he basically told the story to Dhritarashtra. There was nobody who was watching it, like, as a and that is where probably this story started. That head of Barbarik washed the war completely outside, making a commentary on it, so that he basically is the witness, and which is again a human element, which got manifested over the centuries after Mahabharata was written, and Barbarik as a head was introduced. Not only Barbarik's head, we actually find that there are a lot of other talking heads. Now we open a TV channel and we find talking heads all the time. But so Iravan's head also basically in a southern legend. And this story is not only for Barbari, this story is also for Babru Sen. Everybody asks, oh, who is Babru Sen? So remember Bhim, when he was poisoned and he was sent, and he was basically, had a good time with Vasuki, and his group drank the power that gave him the power of 8,000 elephants and all that. He also married a daughter of Vasuki there in one of the southern uh, renditions of Mahabharata. It is not in Vyas Mahabharata at all. The son of that was Babru Sen. Babru Sen, obviously the name is you get recalled the name of Babru Vahan, the son of Arjun, and Babru, another name for Akrur in the epic. So Babru Sen is the Barbarik. So at one point in time, Barbarik was not only the grandson of Bhim, he was also a son of Bhim, who basically came and then watched it. We continue onwards in the temples from Himachal Pradesh. So the mountains, the Himalaya, they have basically three main ranges, which basically come from Kashmir, actually from Pamir, actually down to Kashmir, to Nepal, and I hope people are able to see, right into the Purvottar Bharat. And so these are in three parallel lines. Between them, between these three tall mountain ranges, we have Shivaliks, we have Himadris, the Mahabharat range in between in Nepal. So the people who are in the valleys between these mountain ranges, their communications are actually across the length, not down south towards into the northern India and everything. Their communications are like this. So you see the stories of Ghatotkacha, Hidimba, and other such characters starting from Kashmir right down to Purvottar Bharat. And that's again the part. We have a local deity, local hero. He was part of Mahabharat. He went to fight, and Krishna made him a head. So that basically is a part of it. You go further in second century AD, the tale of Mahabharat actually went to Indonesia, where it was adopted, and there was changes done. Where we don't have one Barbarik, we have three Barbariks: Antaraj, Antasen, and Vishangini. Two of them are sons of Bhim. The third is a son of Arjun. All three of them are very heavily powered, which again is the second concept which is coming into play. Pandavas are sons of gods. Their interactions with uh, humans, so their wives are all humans, so their children are more human like. But what happens if they had, so in the folk legends and everything, they have superpowered wives. So in Indonesian legends, Bhim, two of Bhim's wives are the daughter of Anant Nag or Shesh Nag, and the son is called Antasen. So he's actually extra superpowered, and Christian is very worried about him because when he enters, if he enters the war, there's going to be finished. The war will be finished in days. Again, the whole story back to the Barbrik's initial idea, which Vijay will describe later, the three arrows. But again, it goes back to the same thing. The war will be over in few seconds. Arjun says we will fight it as humans. What or their sons? How will you prevent their superpowered sons? So Christian has uh, Krishna has these stratagems even in Indonesian Mahabharata where Antasen is sent to some other place. He's sent to some outside universe or something like that. It's a very interesting story. Then the same thing with Antaraj. Antaraj is son of Bhim and Varun's daughter. So, okay, we have Varun's own son, Shutayud, in the Mahabharata war, but here Varun's daughter's son. So, there you got Vayu's grandson and Varun's grandson. So, he's Antasen. He's equally powerful. Again, Krishna creates a stratagem where he does not participate in the battle because he wants the war to go on for a longer time. Same thing, Arjun, when he is in heaven, much before he goes to heaven during the Dyut Vanvas. Before that, Arjun has his own several Parthayans, and in that one of those Parthayans, he saves heaven from uh, uh, some uh, some king, some demon king. There are always these demon kings and creator heavens described very beautifully in Indonesian Mahabharata. So in that he marries Brahma's daughter Suprabha. Arjun in the son and Brahma's daughter son. So grandson of Brahma, grandson of Indra is a very powerful character called Vishangini. So half the concept before the war starts is Krishna making sure that the war doesn't end within few seconds. So he removes these characters away from the war itself. And similar tales are basically for Iravan. Iravan is sort of having some extra powers. Iravan is there in Mahabharata war. He fights bravely and he dies on the eighth day at the hands of Alambush. But he's also, again, the same way as Barbarik, uh, Khatushyamji is a concept, is a main hero of many such legends down south, of where basically they wanted to sacrifice a perfect person so that that perfect person basically is that sacrifice is made to bless for victory. This story actually is not only in our, it goes right across. It is starts off with um, Agamemnon having to sacrifice his own daughter as a perfect woman before the start of the Trojan War, because they were trapped, because the gods had trapped them on the island of Crete. The fleet cannot move from there. He had to sacrifice his daughter. The same concept comes here, that you do a sacrifice, and this is part of the the whole Bali pratha and everything. So that all gets reflected in the people when they try to tell the story, and they try to take the name of Mahabharat to sort of justify or to connect these things to Mahabharata. Or even in Mahabharata, this was done. Bali was given in Mahabharata itself. So that part is there. And there is actually in Anushasan Parv and Shanti Parv, you will find that Bhisham does talk about that there used to be Narmed Yagya, but we don't do it anymore. Yug Dharma has changed, which is basically again telling that the whole Narmed and even other. So the life is much more precious, and that basically is what Anushasan Parv and Shanti Parv is trying to say. But people read the first part. Okay, Med, you know, let's do the sacrifice. They don't read the whole story. That's the thing. Everybody just looks at Twitter version of each thing they want to see, right? They don't want to see the whole thing. So that's basically where the Barbrik story, Barbrik, Yalambar, Babru Sen, Irawan, all these stories come from. But as such, Barbari, and another part is, okay, people, there'll be a lot of people who will be complaining about this. So I'll just tell that part also. Jamini Ashwamedh Parv. So we actually, so Vyas had four disciples. All of them wrote their own versions of Mahabharata. We actually use the Vaishampayan version, which Vaishampayan tells to Janamjay, right? So Jamini also wrote one, as did Pal and Sumantu, and Shuk also. Shuk wrote a sort of a synopsis of 25,000, 24,000. They even said in the beginning of Mahabharata, he wrote one, but that's not available. None of those are available right now. Other than they said Jamini Ashwamedh Parv is available from the 8th century. Their texts we have. In Jamini Ashwamedh Parv, there is a son, another son of Ghatotkach, Meghvarn, makes an appearance. And in Skand Puran, Meghvarn is the younger brother of Barbarik or son of Barbarik. So that's where, we have a funny connect here, basically. But again, Jamini Ashwamedh Parv does not specifically connect Meghvarn to Barbarik also. So Barbarik only stays in the Skand Puran. Now, we can pass it on to Vijay, and Vijay can talk about the three and the five. I know. So, Gaurav, can you do a quick Hindi summary, and then we can pass it on to Vijay?
थैंक्स प्रांशु। आई थिंक लास्ट टाइम बहुत सारे लोग बोल रहे थे कि हिंदी में बात करें, तो मैंने कहा चलो इस बार मैं हिंदी में बात कर लेता हूं लोगों से। सो आज हम लोग बात कर रहे हैं बर्बरीक की। बर्बरीक की कहानी बहुत पॉपुलर है, स्पेशली राजस्थान और नॉर्थ इंडियन रीजन्स में। राजस्थान में खाटू श्याम के नाम से बर्बरीक की पूजा की जाती है। बर्बरीक की कहानी कहाँ से आई? बर्बरीक की कहानी महाभारत में नहीं है। अगर हम लोग महाभारत पुस्तक पढ़ेंगे तो उसमें बर्बरीक का मेंशन नहीं है। उसमें घटोत्कच के एक पुत्र का मेंशन है जिसका नाम है अंजन पर्वा, जो कि द्रोण पर्व के दौरान अश्वत्थामा के द्वारा मारा जाता है। उसके अलावा घटोत्कच के किसी भी पुत्र का महाभारत में मेंशन नहीं है। तो ये बर्बरीक की कहानी आती कहाँ से? बर्बरीक की कहानी आती है स्कंद पुराण से। स्कंद पुराण में भीम के पुत्र घटोत्कच, घटोत्कच के पुत्र बर्बरीक, और उसमें बर्बरीक और भीम का एक युद्ध भी दिखाया है जिसमें जब बर्बरीक को पता नहीं होता कि भीम कौन है। और महाभारत युद्ध के प्रारंभ में जब सब लोग एकत्रित होते हैं तो बातचीत होती है कि भाई दुर्योधन सबसे सवाल पूछते हैं कि कौन ये युद्ध कितने दिन में खत्म कर सकता है। तो भीष्म जवाब देते हैं कि हम इतने दिन में कर सकते हैं। द्रोण भी कुछ नंबर ऑफ डेज बताते हैं। कर्ण भी कुछ बताते हैं बढ़ चढ़ के कि हम तो इतने दिन में खत्म कर देंगे। सिमिलर क्वेश्चन जब युधिष्ठिर पूछते हैं अपने सेनापतियों से, तो अर्जुन बोलते हैं कि ये क्वेश्चन इनवैलिड है, ये क्वेश्चन पूछने की जरूरत नहीं है, क्योंकि अगर हम लोग अपनी डिवाइन पावर्स यूज करें तो हम तो ये मिनटों में, क्षण भर में युद्ध खत्म कर सकते हैं। आप धर्मराज हैं, आप धर्मराज के पुत्र हैं, आप क्रोध से देख भी लेंगे तो सब लोग भस्म हो जाएंगे, तो हमको युद्ध करने की जरूरत ही नहीं पड़ेगी। लेकिन हम लोग को अपनी डिवाइन पावर नहीं यूज करनी, हम लोग को ये इंसानों की तरह यूज करना है, युद्ध लड़ना है। और हालांकि महाभारत में इस बर्बरीक का मेंशन नहीं है, लेकिन जो बर्बरीक की कहानी हम सुनते हैं उसमें यहीं पे इसी मौके पर बर्बरीक से पूछा जाता है कि भाई तुम कितने समय में खत्म कर सकते हो युद्ध। और बर्बरीक फिर बताते हैं कि भाई मैं भी ये युद्ध, मैं तो 3 बाण से युद्ध खत्म कर दूंगा। और ये बात अभी हम विजय कृष्णन इसको और डिटेल में कवर करेंगे कि बर्बरीक के 3 बाण क्या थे और बर्बरीक ने वो 3 बाणों से क्या किया। उसके बाद कहानी आगे ऐसे जाती है कि श्री कृष्ण नहीं चाहते थे कि ये युद्ध डिवाइन पावर्स से लड़ा जाए और ये युद्ध में बर्बरीक जैसे योद्धा भाग लें। तो उन्होंने बर्बरीक को बोला कि आप मुझे अपना सर दान में दीजिए। तो बर्बरीक ने अपना सर काट के श्री कृष्ण के चरणों में रख दिया और श्री कृष्ण से बर्बरीक ने बोला कि मुझे लेकिन ये युद्ध पूरा देखना है। तो श्री कृष्ण ने बर्बरीक का सर जो है वो एक टीले पे रख दिया। तो वहां से फिर वो सर जो है वो सर को ही काटा, और उसके बाद एक और वरदान दिया श्री कृष्ण ने कि तुम मेरे नाम से जाने जाओगे, मेरे नाम से पूजे जाओगे, और इसीलिए बर्बरीक को खाटू श्याम नाम से जाना जाता है। तो ये जो कहानी है, ये कहानी कुछ तरीके, मतलब एग्जैक्टली ऐसे नहीं, बट थोड़ा बहुत वर्जन आपका स्कंद पुराण में मिलता है। तो ये कंप्लीट मिथ मैं नहीं बोलूंगा इसको, मतलब कुछ तो है, इसका सोर्स हम ट्रैक कर सकते हैं। बट अगर हम वेदव्यास जी की महाभारत को कैनन मान के चले तो उसमें बर्बरीक का नाम एक बार भी नहीं लिया गया है। उसके बाद जैसे प्रांशु ने बताया कि ऐसा बर्बरीक अकेला कैरेक्टर नहीं है, बहुत सारे जो रिटेलिंग्स हुए महाभारत के अलग अलग रीजन्स में, अलग अलग जगहों पे, कि बाली में, इंडोनेशिया में लोगों ने महाभारत लिखी, नेपाल में महाभारत लिखी, सब ने अपने अपने बर्बरीक इक्विवेलेंट कैरेक्टर इजाद कर दिए हैं कि भाई नेपाल से कोई राजा थे, वो आ रहे हैं, वो बोले, श्री कृष्ण ने बोला कि भाई तुम कैसे युद्ध खत्म कर सकते हो, कहां से, किस तरफ से लड़ोगे, तो उन्होंने बोला जो साइड लूज कर रही होगी हम उधर से लड़ेंगे। मतलब आप हर दूसरे दिन साइड चेंज कर रहे होंगे, क्योंकि जिस साइड आप जाओगे वो साइड ज्यादा पावरफुल हो जाएगी और दूसरी साइड लूज करने लग जाएगी। सिमिलर कहानी बर्बरीक के लिए भी है। लॉजिकल तो नहीं लगता मुझे, बट है वैसी कहानी कि अदरवाइज प्रैक्टिकली कैसे होगा कि इधर से इधर, इधर द मोमेंट यू कम ऑन दिस साइड विल बिकम स्ट्रॉन्गर, यू विल हैव टू स्विच साइड, यू विल जस्ट कीप जंपिंग फ्रॉम हियर एंड देयर। तो प्रैक्टिकली तो मुझे नहीं लगता कि ऐसा हो सकता है, बट ऐसे लेजेंड्स आते हैं, मिलते हैं। ऐसे ही बहुत सारे पांडवों के पुत्रों के बारे में प्रांशु ने बताया कि जैसे महाभारत के वेदव्यास वर्जन में नहीं, लेकिन जो रीजनल रिटेलिंग्स हैं उनमें बहुत सारे ऐसे डिवाइन पुत्र हैं पांडवों के कि अर्जुन के पुत्र, सॉरी, अर्जुन का किसी गंधर्वी या देवी से, अप्सरा से विवाह हुआ, पुत्र हुआ, तो उनके अंदर डिवाइन पावर है। मतलब जैसे भीम के विवाह किसी वरुण देव की पुत्री से हुआ तो वो डिवाइन पावर्स है उनके अंदर। इवन इरावान उलूपी नाग जनरेशन से आए और इरावान ऑल्सो हैड मैजिकल डिवाइन पावर्स। तो ऐसे लोग जब वहां पे युद्ध लड़ेंगे तो वो फिर ह्यूमन तरीके से नहीं लड़ा जाएगा, फिर वो डिवाइन तरीके से लड़ा जाएगा, और फिर वो धर्म युद्ध नहीं रह जाएगा, फिर वो देवासुर संग्राम की तरह हो जाएगा। और वो फिर जैसे सतयुग में होते थे इंद्र और बाकी असुरों के बीच में तारकामय संग्राम और उस टाइप के, तो कृष्ण नहीं चाहते थे वैसा संग्राम हो, ऐसा कहानियों में बताया जाता है। तो इसलिए जो ऐसे डिवाइन प्लेयर्स थे जो युद्ध को ऐसा स्क्यू कर सकते थे, कृष्ण ने बोला कि भाई तुम लोग इस युद्ध में भाग मत लो। तो किसी का सर काट दिया जैसे बर्बरीक, किसी को कहीं दूसरे रियल में भेज दिया, किसी को कहीं और भेज दिया, किसी को तीर्थ यात्रा पे भेज दिया कि भाई तुम लोग मत पार्टिसिपेट करो, हम लोग आपस में निपट लेंगे। सो बर्बरीक के बारे में जो अभी तक प्रांशु ने बताया वो इतना है। और ऑनेस्टली प्रांशु ने जो बातें बताई इनमें से आधी से ज्यादा मुझे भी नहीं पता थी। तो थैंक यू प्रांशु। एंड आई थिंक नाउ वी कैन मूव टू विजय कृष्णन। विजय बताएंगे वो 3 मैजिकल बाण जिनके बारे में मैंने मेंशन किया था, वो देखते हैं 3 मैजिकल बाण क्या करते हैं, फिर मैं आपको वापस उसको हिंदी में बताऊंगा ताकि आप लोग आसानी से उसको समझ सकें। ओवर टू यू विजय।
Yeah, thank you everyone. Thank you Deepak ji, Gaurav, Pranshu ji. So yeah, good afternoon everyone. I'll take on from where Pranshu left it. So continuing with the legend of Barbarika and his powers. So he has 3 arrows in Rajasthan, where the cult of Khatu Shyamji is, he's revered as Khatu Shyamji, or one, whose head was placed on a hill from where he viewed the entire war. So his specialty was he had Teen Band. He's known as Teen Bandhari. He has a lot of names, but the primal name is Teen Bandhari. Where did these 3 arrows come from? So as the local legends tell us, he got these 3 arrows from a group of deities known as the Ashtadeva. That is how the legend mentions it. Or in certain versions, it's known that Shiva, who is primarily Mahadeva, is the one who primarily gives the weapons in all of our Puranas or Itihasas, if you see. So Shiva grants these powerful arrows to them. Now let's come to what these arrows could do, or what made him so invincible that even Krishna had to interfere and kind of neutralize his presence. The first arrow would destroy all his opponents, the ones he had marked as opponents. The second arrow would mark all those persons or objects that he wanted to save. The third arrow would then, kind of destroy all the things that he had not marked. So in effect, in 3 arrows, any confrontation, any battle would end. However, there was a condition to this, as Pranshu has mentioned. Barbarika promised his mother, Ghatotkacha's wife Morvi, that he'd fight for the weaker side. That is kind of a promise his mother took for him. And when he says this to Krishna, he says, I'll fight for the weaker side. So Krishna poses a counter question. So, okay, you start fighting for the Pandavas and they gain power. The Kauravas become weaker. Then what will you do? Then in that case, he says, I'll shift to the Kauravas. Now, in that case, it would become an endless loop wherein Barbarika would jump, as Pranshu said and Gauravji mentioned, that he'll jump from one side to the other continuously and the war would never end, thereby defeating the very purpose of the war. I think, the whole purpose of the Mahabharata is the Bhumi Bar Haran project of, Vyasa and Krishna, everyone. The ultimate goal is defeated if you allow these supernatural factors to come into play. And in the end, as Gauravji mentioned, it is a very human war. It has to be a human war. Now, if it becomes a divine war or a supernatural war, it takes on gargantuan proportions, the effect of which Earth will not be able to handle. Secondly, it will become an endless loop wherein we find no conclusion. So, Barbarica is a factor or a person who has to be neutralized or kept outside of the boundaries of the war. I think that is what kind of the legend also tries to tell us, that uh, unlimited power cannot kind of always solve the solution. And I'll come to that in the conclusion when we speak of these three arrows and the other powers that are conveyed to such warriors. Why does this kind of these legends crop up? Why do these legends crop up? Where in the common mind does do these legends find any source? So Barbarica's story and his three arrows are this. So these powerful three arrows, from a issue to solution point, Barbarica was the perfect warrior to finish the Mahabharata war. However, the Mahabharata is not only just about the eradication of evil or the eradication of the Kauravas. It's not a linear project. It is about establishing dharma. And as we have also said in earlier, episodes of this series, it's about establishing dharma and bringing back a balance that had been disturbed in the events after the Dyut Sabha and the Vanvas and everything. So it's about restoring dharma. It's not about eradicating somebody that whom you think to be an opponent. It's not a mindless war or a battle, as most retellings and common talk tries to convey. Mahabharata is not a mindless, bloodlust inspired war. It is a very thought out effort to restore balance in nature, in the nation, and to restore dharma. In conclusion, let's move on to another folk tale here, similar to the Barbarica legend. This is of Panch Band. Now we have heard of 15 Band in case of Barbarica. Let's hear of 5 Bands. Now this story is associated with Bhishma. Yeah, it's associated with Bhishma and Duryodhana. I tried to find out where the story exactly comes from. I think it comes from the Odia Mahabharata. Odia Mahabharata also has 2 versions. One is the more popular Sarla Das version. Sarla Das was a 15th century poet in Odia who wrote the Odia version of the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, which is considered to be his magnum opus. He also wrote a version of the Devi Bhagavatam known as the Chandi Purana. So in the Mahabharata, there's a story that Bhishma had promised to kill the 5 Pandavas with 5 golden arrows that are imbued with his life force and the force of his tapasya. Bhishma is the holder of a very terrible vow. So with all that power, he endues these 5 arrows and he keeps them as a keepsake for vanquishing the Pandavas. One day, just before the war begins, Duryodhana has a discussion with him as to how he will vanquish the Pandavas, and Bhishma reveals his secret. I have these 5 arrows with which I can kill the Pandavas. Duryodhana is a hasty person. He doesn't, kind of wait for events to play out. So in his haste, he says, "You give me the arrows for safekeeping." So he's kind of offended. The grandsire is offended and says, "Why don't you trust me?" He says, "No, for your own benefit, I'll keep them and I'll give it to you when the time is ripe." Bhishma gives it to his grandson, who anyway doesn't listen to what elders say a lot of times. And at the same night, when this thing is happening between the grandfather and grandson, Krishna in the Pandava camp gets a kind of intuition as to something is cooking. So he asks Arjuna, and here the story kind of takes a flashback turn. Krishna reminds Arjuna of a promise that he had taken from Duryodhana during the Ghosha Yatra Parva, when Duryodhana is captured by the Gandharvas. So at night, when Duryodhana was saved by Arjuna and Bhima, in return, he's an egoistical person. He promises to give them a vardhan. He says, "Arjuna, I'll fulfill any one wish that you have anytime, whenever you ask it." So Krishna says, "This is the time to go and ask the wish. In return for having saved his life, then you demand the 5 arrows." And the rest of it, the story is pretty simple. Arjuna goes, Duryodhana is unable to refuse. The 5 arrows are taken by Arjuna and the Pandavas are saved. A slightly different version, the Sarla Das Mahabharata. It's not 5 arrows. I think Duryodhana has a golden crown which makes him invincible. That's exactly what's there in the Sarla Das story. So instead of the arrows, Arjuna takes the golden crown, which probably neutralizes any power the Kauravas might have had. So this is kind of the Panchband story, and I think the story is also quite of retold in the Tamil versions of the epic. More recently, in the 20th century, there was the great Tamil literature Kiva Jagannathan, who is known to have revived interest in Sangam texts and literature down south. He's counted among one of the main authorities in Tamil literature in modern era. So in one of Kiva Jagannathan's story retellings, he mentions the story of Bhishma having these 5 golden arrows that Duryodhana took from him and then Arjuna. So it probably follows the same structure as the Odia Mahabharata. So now clearly what in conclusion we can find is that these stories of Teen Ban or Panch Ban are folk tales. They are nowhere to be found in the Vyasa Mahabharata. The folk tales that came later, in the course of India's history and with the kind of events that India saw during the medieval ages, possibly these stories emerged as a result of 2 factors. One, to inspire, the readers and the common populace to a life of bravery and untold power. We have faced lot of invasions in these medieval times. Secondly, I think it's merely a human fascination with the concept of being invincible. Who would not like to have be someone like an Iron Man or a Thor? Even today, Marvel makes these wonderful movies where one flick, Thanos can probably end the world. So that fascination, I think, has stayed all along through the ages. I think it is that kind of a thought process that gives rise to these legends. However, if you take the Mahabharata as a core text, there's nowhere a stress on these factors. Mahabharata, Vyasa Mahabharata, more so speaks about dharma and the ways to achieve and establish it. So yeah, in the end, we must take these tales as probably nice folk tales to be read and enjoyed, and probably respected as well, as some of these stories don't have any misleading effects. They probably give rise to a cult or a deity, as in the case of Khatu Shyamji, and they probably increase your attention and reverence towards the main epic as well. So they may be taken as aids to spread the word about the Mahabharata, but yes, they can't be taken as canon if you go by the Vyasa Mahabharata. That's all I'd like to say. Thank you.
Yeah, I would request Gaurav to please sum up in Hindi because we have a lot of Hindi listeners.
So थैंक्स अगेन दीपक, थैंक्स विजय,
Thanks.
बहुत बढ़िया आपने ये बताया. अभी ये बर्बरीक के 3 बाण की क्या कहानी है. बर्बरीक के 3 बाण थे कि जब बर्बरीक से पूछा गया कि भाई तुम कैसे युद्ध खत्म कर दोगे ये क्षण भर में, तो बर्बरीक ने बोला मेरे पास 3 बाण हैं और ये 3 बाण से कैसे करेंगे खत्म. तो बोले पहले बाण से मैं मार्क करूंगा जो लोग को मुझे मारना है, दूसरे बाण से मैं मार्क करूंगा जिन लोगों को मुझे बचाना है, और तीसरा बाण जो है वो जाके उन सबको मार देगा जिनको मैंने पहले बाण से मार्क किया है. तो ऐसे मैं 3 बाण से पूरा सारे एनिमीज को खत्म कर दूंगा. अभी ये 3 बाण बर्बरीक को मिले कहां से? तो जो 2 इसके मामले में वर्जन मिलते हैं. एक तो है कि ये अष्टरुद्र करके डेटी थी जिनको बर्बरीक पूजा करते थे और जिनके बहुत बड़े भक्त थे, और कोई तो गुप्त क्षेत्र रीजन में उन्होंने उसकी बहुत ज्यादा पूजा करी थी जो कि स्कंद पुराण में है, और जहां उनको वरदान स्वरूप ये 3 इनविंसिबल बाण मिले थे. और कोई वर्जन में बोलते हैं महादेव से मिले थे, और मैंने एक वर्जन पढ़ा है जिसमें कोई तो देवी से मिले थे. तो इस तरीके से वो बहुत सारे सोर्सेज हैं वो 3 बाणों के जिनसे बर्बरीक युद्ध खत्म कर सकते थे. और इसका इनफैक्ट एक सिमिलर वर्जन स्कंद पुराण में भी मिलता है जहां पे बर्बरीक वो बाण चलाते हैं और लोगों के मार्क बन जाता है कुमकुम के कलर का. तो वो बोलते हैं कि जिसमें मतलब अश्वत्थामा, कृपाचार्य, इन लोगों को वो मार्क नहीं लगता है, बाकी लोगों के शरीर पे, सबके, किसी के गर्दन पे, किसी के हाथ पे, किसी के पैर पे, श्री कृष्ण के एड़ी पे. तो बेसिकली वो पहले बाण से, स्कंद पुराण के वर्जन के हिसाब से वो पहले बाण से आइडेंटिफाई करेगा कि वीक स्पॉट क्या है इनके शरीर का. तो जैसे श्री कृष्ण के एड़ी, भी दुर्योधन की थाई, द्रोणाचार्य की गर्दन, ऐसे करके सबके वो वीक स्पॉट मार्क करेगा और फिर वो दूसरे बाण से तीर चलाएगा और सब लोग मर जाएंगे. उसमें स्कंद पुराण में 2 ही बाण है, एक्चुअली 3 बाण की जरूरत नहीं पड़ती उसमें, बट एसेंशियली ऐसा एक लेजेंड है. हालांकि अगर मैं इस बारे में सोचूं तो ये देन स्विचिंग साइड वाला सिस्टम मुझे समझ नहीं आता कैसे वर्क करेगा, क्योंकि अगर आपने 3 बार से खत्म कर दिया तो जिस साइड से आपने स्टार्ट किया वो साइड जीत गई, उसके बाद दूसरी साइड वीक नहीं हो, मतलब ये इट विल नेवर वर्क, राइट? लॉजिकली कैसे वर्क करेगा मुझे समझ नहीं आया, बट ऐसी कहानी है. और जैसे मैं लास्ट टाइम भी बोल रहा था कि हार्मफुल मिथ होते हैं और कुछ हार्मलेस मिथ होते हैं, तो इसको मैं हार्मलेस मिथ वाली कैटेगरी में डालता हूं कि इस मिथ पे बिलीव करने से किसी का कोई नुकसान नहीं हो रहा है. और इनफैक्ट जैसे विजय कृष्णन ने बोला कि इसमें बिलीव करने से कुछ लोगों का महाभारत के प्रति और एक क्यूरियोसिटी बढ़ रही है, लोगों को और जानने का एक इच्छा होती है और लोग उसको जानना चाहते हैं। और जो लोग ज्यादा मतलब उत्सुक लोग हैं वो शायद से इसको देख के पढ़ें, शायद से उनको और कुछ समझने को मिले, जानने को मिले, क्योंकि महाभारत का उद्देश्य केवल युद्ध नहीं है। इनफैक्ट जब लोग युद्ध की बात करते हैं तो मैं बोलता हूँ युद्ध के बाद भी 2 मोटी मोटी किताबें हैं। तो अगर युद्ध उसका उद्देश्य होता तो चौथी किताब पे वो वेदव्यास जी खत्म कर देते, 5वीं और 6ठी किताब लिखने की जरूरत नहीं थी। मतलब अगर आप गीता प्रेस वर्जन की बात करें तो उसमें 6 बुक्स है, राइट, और 6 बुक में चौथी बुक के एंड में युद्ध खत्म हो जाता है। 5वीं और 6ठी किताब लिखने की जरूरत क्या थी? 5वीं और 6ठी किताब इसलिए लिखी है जो अनुशासन पर्व की बात करी, शांति पर्व की बात करी, अश्वमेध पर्व है, उसमें क्या है? उसमें यही कहानियां है। भीष्म पहले उसको ज्ञान देते हैं युधिष्ठिर को कि एक राजा को कैसे बिहेव करना चाहिए। अश्वमेध पर्व में आके नेवला कहानी सुना रहा है कि भाई एक भिखारी का दान तुम्हारे बड़े दान से ज्यादा महान है। तो इस समय इस तरह की कहानियों की जरूरत क्या थी अगर युद्ध ही महाभारत का उद्देश्य था? तो युद्ध महाभारत का उद्देश्य नहीं था। महाभारत का उद्देश्य था तो लोगों को बात बताना कि भाई किस समय कैसे कंडक्ट करना चाहिए। और आप जो बोलते हैं ना, हर तरीके की कहानी जो आप इमेजिन कर सकते हो वो महाभारत में मिल जाएगी। तो किसका कंडक्ट कैसा है और उस समय किसने कैसे एक्ट किया उसको काउंटर करने के लिए, कि आपके सामने एक भीष्म जैसे योद्धा हैं, आप उनको कैसे काउंटर करोगे? आपके सामने एक द्रोण जैसे योद्धा हैं, आप उनको कैसे काउंटर करोगे? उसमें धर्म कहाँ है, कहाँ नहीं है? अब कोई आया उसने 2 बाण से 3 बाण से युद्ध खत्म कर दिया, तो ये लेसन कैसे सीखने को मिलेंगे? तो ये लेसन ज्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट थे। तो इसलिए महाभारत में बर्बरीक का कैरेक्टर नहीं है। हो सकता है बर्बरीक रहे हो, मैं तो था नहीं, मुझे नहीं पता कि बर्बरीक थे कि नहीं थे, हो सकता है रहे हो। महाभारत से डिलिबरेटली हो सकता है उनको हटा दिया गया हो क्योंकि वो उद्देश्य फुलफिल नहीं कर रहे थे जो महाभारत का उद्देश्य था। आगे अगर हम बात करें 5 बाणों की, तो ये भीष्म पितामह के 5 बाण, मैंने भी ये मिथ रिसेंटली डिस्कवर किया, मुझे ये मिथ एक्चुअली नहीं पता था। तो इसमें इस मिथ के हिसाब से कहानी ऐसी है कि भीष्म पितामह 7-8 दिन युद्ध के हो जाते हैं और दुर्योधन को लगता नहीं है कि जीत रहे हैं। तो दुर्योधन एक रात भीष्म पितामह के पास जाते हैं और उनको खूब बुरा भला सुनाते हैं कि आप पक्षपाती हैं, आप पांडवों के हितैषी हैं और आप सही नहीं कर रहे हैं। और भीष्म पितामह नाराज हो जाते हैं और गुस्से में बोलते हैं कि कल मैं पांडवों को इन 5 बाणों से मार दूंगा। तो दुर्योधन बोलता है बड़ी अच्छी बात है, आप बताइए, आप मुझे आपकी बात पे विश्वास नहीं हो रहा। तो भीष्म पितामह उनको 5 गोल्डन एरोज दिखाते हैं कि ये देखो ये 5 एरो हैं और इनको मैं 5 एरोज को कल यूज करूंगा और ये 5 पांडव इन 5 तीरों से मार दिए जाएंगे, तुम जब भी निश्चिंत हो जाओ। लेकिन दुर्योधन को हमेशा से लगता था कि भीष्म पांडवों से ज्यादा प्यार करते हैं, तो शायद ये कल इनका मन बदल जाए। तो भीष्म दुर्योधन बोलता है कि आप ये सारे जो तीर हैं ये मुझे दे दीजिए सेफ कीपिंग के लिए, क्योंकि कल को अगर आपके पास कोई आया, मान लो युधिष्ठिर आए और आपसे मांग के चले गए, तो आप तो ये दे दोगे उनको, तो कल मरेंगे कैसे पांडव? तो भीष्म से दुर्योधन वो तीर ले लेते हैं। अब वो तीर जब ले लेते हैं तो कृष्ण अपनी लीला करते हैं। कृष्ण अर्जुन से बोलते हैं कि तुम जाके दुर्योधन से ये तीर वापस तीर ले लो, नहीं तो कल तुम्हारा युद्ध खत्म हो जाएगा, युधिष्ठिर और तुम बाकी चारों लोग भी कल मारे जाओगे और तुम्हें कोई नहीं बचा सकता। तो अर्जुन बोलते हैं भाई दुर्योधन मुझे क्यों तीर देगा? तो श्री कृष्ण उनको याद दिलाते हैं कि भाई घोष यात्रा के समय जब गंधर्वों को आपने हरा कर दुर्योधन की को बचाया था, तब दुर्योधन ने आपसे बोला था कि एक वरदान आपको देंगे। तो उसको वो इवेंट याद दिला के तुम वो 5 तीर दुर्योधन से ले लो। अर्जुन जाते हैं और दुर्योधन से बोलते हैं कि भाई अभी मेरे वरदान का समय आ गया है और मुझे वो 5 बाण वापस दे दो। अब दुर्योधन ने वचन दिया था। अब समहाउ इस स्टोरी में दुर्योधन बहुत ऑनरेबल कैरेक्टर है, इसीलिए मुझे महाभारत से काफी कॉन्फ्लिक्टिंग लग रहा है कि ये शायद सही नहीं होगा, क्योंकि ऐसा दुर्योधन नहीं कर सकता। इतना ऑनर दिखाना होता तो यहाँ तक की नौबत ही नहीं आती। बट समहाउ इस कहानी में दुर्योधन ने दिखाया ऑनर और वो 5 तीर जो है वो अर्जुन को दे दिए। और उसके बाद मतलब वो तीर क्या हुआ वो किसी को नहीं पता, बट पांडव बच गए एसेंशियली, क्योंकि वो तीर कल अगले दिन नहीं चले। अब ये मिथ क्यों है? जो मैंने बोला कि दुर्योधन पहली चीज तो इतनी ऑनरेबली एक्ट करे ऐसा पूरे महाभारत में समझ नहीं आता। ये आउट ऑफ कैरेक्टर बिहेवियर है दुर्योधन का।
सरला दास, एक्चुअली सरला दास की जो कहानी है उसमें जरा वो प्रतिनायक वो जो होता है ना प्रतिनायक विलन को
एंटी
ग्लोरिफिकेशन,
हीरो,
हाँ, सो प्रतिनायक ग्लोरिफिकेशन जो है टेंडेंसी जो आ जाती है वो सरला दास की उसमें भी आती है। वैसे जैसे 5 बार की जो कहानी है, इंडोनेशियन वर्जन हैज अ वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग स्टोरी इन दैट कि ऑन द 9th डे ऑफ द बैटलफील्ड lot of war had already taken place, lot of people were injured and everything. In Indonesian Mahabharat, Arjun has around 20, I mean, has 41 wives named. I mean, 41 wives plus mentioned, 19 of them in named. There's a lot of children and everything. So they're all fighting. So the 5 of the sons of Pandavas, various, not only Arjun but others also, they're very injured and everything. So they don't actually go to the battlefield on the 9th day. On 9th day, because now they are not going because they are ill or injured. One of the Shrikandi is actually in that Indonesian Mahabharata. She is the wife of Arjun, and one of her sons has lost an arm and everything. So they basically, so basically Indonesian Mahabharata is much more, like you could say, a little gruesome, like it's describing in details what happens to the warriors in the battlefield and everything, and injuries and the treatment of injuries. So obviously somebody is trying to also capture some information that, shave your hair. Ghatotkacha shaves his hair because in wounds the hair doesn't fall and infect. A very interesting thing, because that actually during the World War II, the Polish army used to do that. They used to shave their hair so that it shouldn't fall in that. So it's something with it's all this information is sort of kept inside and sort of latched onto their versions of Mahabharata. Now on the 9th day, what happens is 5 of the younger sons who are not old enough to really fight well, they are they are not allowed to go to the battlefield. They take the armor and the helmets of their older brothers who are right now resting and are ill. So they take there and they go to fight. And Bhisham basically had said from the beginning, the day I am sick of killing, I will myself ask. He had told Shikandini that Shrikandi, she's called in Indonesian Mahabharata, that that day I will tell you when I'm sick of it, then you can go ahead and kill me, basically. And he will go on to the Barsha, yeah. But on the 9th day, when he's fighting, these 5 young princes, they come and they challenge him. He knows everybody inside out. He knows everybody who's a Marathi, who's a Ardharathi, and everything. He tells that, right? So he understands. Okay, they can actually balance these 5. They can balance these arrows of mine, and they can withstand them. And he shoots them. And to his horror, all 5 of them die. And that's when he realizes it's the younger kids who had come onto the battlefield. And that's when he goes. So the story here, Indonesian version, is that's when he basically realizes, okay, you know what, I want to die. I don't want to live anymore. And then next day, Shikandi kills him. I mean, basically puts him on the Barashia.
तो
So
ये तो
that's a
प्रांशु, ये ट्रोजन लेजेंड्स में भी ऐसा ही दिखाया गया है ना, अकिलीस सिट्स आउट ऑफ द वॉर एंड देन हेक्टर किल्स
Patroclus.
द यंगर।
Patroclus.
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 हाँ, तो ये
Patroclus takes
मुझे
the
लगता है
armor,
ये
and that's
आपस में
exactly
एक दूसरे को इंस्पायर कर रहे हैं कहानियां। कौन सी ने किसको इंस्पायर
exactly.
किया मुझे पता नहीं, बट इट सीम्स
No, the
सिमिलर।
Trojan War was designed. Trojan War का तो ये designation था ना कि Iron Age is coming. And before that, there are a lot of gods have a lot of children running around, Hercules and all those. There are like around 75, like Zeus children, 50 plus. Actually, I mean, Hercules kills a lot of Neptune's children, like Poseidon's
Poseidon.
children, and Ares and others. They all have all these. So they all come together in that battlefield on Trojan
टू
War,
डाई।
where they can kill each other, and then the humans, the Iron Age, the age of humanity can begin, right? So that's actually the same concept. It is clear, and here that 5 arrows is basically there is that Bhisham basically deciding he kills the kids by not realizing, because they were wearing the helmets, and that's exactly Patroclus was wearing the helmet of that armor and helmet of Achilles, and
अकिलीस,
um, was
हेक्टर
it
किल्स।
Troilus? No, it was not Troilus. It was Hector killed him. Hector killed him. Yeah. So yeah, they basically, and so again that 5 arrows come in. But see, another part of it is when they make these stories, right? So people, when you can tell that some of these, see, Vyas is a very Vyas tells us a lot of information in everything he does, right? Each shlok he basically overloads it with a lot of information, so that Triyartho, right, that comes through. Then when somebody else makes those changes, right, you can tell that they are from a person who is not of that great a caliber. So if you make something which is too powerful, you have painted yourself in the corner, and so you need Krishnan to come in and edit you out of the corner. Krishnan comes in and says, okay, give me your head, right? So this is basically which tells you that where you're putting yourself in a corner, and then you. Now I'll give you a very good example, like Bhisham's 5 arrows. If Bhisham still used that arrow and used the first arrow on Yudhishthir, Yudhishthir has already been blessed by Yamaraj for victory. So Bhisham shoots that arrow, and Yamaraj doesn't go and collect Yudhishthir, right? He stays there. That's what I talked about, right? An immovable, like irresistible force meeting an immovable object. It will just continue going on forever, and that's again the idea. Then you are trapped in it. So somebody wrote that story up, then realized, oh, you know what? Yudhishthir cannot be killed. Bhim is son of Vayu. Arjun is son of Indra. They all have actually armors which cannot be broken, right? Now we have placed himself in a problem. Okay. Arjun goes at night and gets key. Okay, give me those 5 arrows because I saved your life. And again, that's the another concept of Pandavas were the real Danvis of Mahabharata. They rescued Duryodhan, his whole family. They rescued every one of them and let them go. That hopefully they learn that lesson. And if you look at Mahabharata, only Shakuni learned that lesson, where he basically changed his stripes. They captured Jayadratha and then they let him go. Hopefully he learns that lesson. Jatasur, they had given Jatasur, shelter and as a part of their team, but Jatasur broke that compact, and then his son Alayud came, and on the 14th night he fought, and then Ghatotkacha killed him. So again, they try to do good whatever happens. That's what Gita they said, na? Karam karo, phal ki kamna mat karo. You do your duty. Neki kar, darya mein dal. Let's look at the other way, right? Hatim Tai ke saath sawal. Neki kar, darya mein dal. Again, see, everything feeds into each other. And that's how these stories come out, and then they spread. So this again is the concept. Again, now the 5 arrows really are actually with another gentleman, Kamdev. And of course there's no real connect for those 5 arrows or something like that. So that is basically what is in the Purans and everything. It is there. So now if we have given somebody 5 arrows for actually good, I mean, those 5 arrows basically are used for creation of the next generation, literally, if you think about it, right? So that's always about Srishti. So then somebody has to come up with an idea. Acha, 5 arrow Bhisham. Now think about it. The logic, like somebody will be writing, Kamdev, associated with, Vilasta and everything, has 5 arrows. Now let's put it in the hands of. So I think some of these stories may be, and as I said, they're so not really badly written. They may be ironical. Instead of Kamdev, you put it in Bhisham, who's totally away from Kam, and he has 5 arrows also, right? So this may be an ironical twist. Like we don't know what the origin, like what Sarla Das might be even trying to be ironical here, and he has been there. See, one of the other stories which comes out of it is that Ghatotkacha, for example, when we're talking about Barbari, we should talk about Ghatotkacha. Ghatotkacha insulted Draupadi, and so he was cursed, and all these fake stories that they keep on coming up, as Gaurav you had mentioned in the
Yes.
video, right? So these are just kept on adding. Now that actually story also comes from Sarla Das. That both of these ladies, Draupadi and Hidimba, had a fight in the court, and they cursed each other's children. Now no mother will do that. And that could be Sarla Das's own some logic or some other point he was trying to make, which is now lost over the ages. That there's no commentary which is there to illustrate what Sarla Das was trying to tell us here. Now it becomes a fake story, and then it basically propagates as a myth. Now, if you look back to that story itself, right? Ghatotkaч helped all the time. He was there when Draupadi fell ill on the mountain. He was the first one to respond back, and he was there till the end part of it, right? So obviously that is not there now in Skand Puran, which we are talking about, right? The Barbaric story. That is where we are actually told that Draupadi goes and brings the young Ghatotkaч back and puts him in the Indraprasth. And when Krishna is there and Krishna says, "I'm heading out to fight Narkasur," that's when he takes Ghatotkaч with him, and Ghatotkaч meets Morvi, daughter of Murudyate, who was one of the main commanders of Narkasur. So the Barbaric story itself has a bunch of these sidelines which actually contradict other myths which basically creep up, right? So if you use Skand Puran also, you can actually break some of these myths. So that's and I think आप इसको हिंदी में भी गौरव बता सकते हैं.
आप प्रांशु, आपने इतना सारा बताया कि मुझे हिंदी में बताना बहुत कठिन होगा, बट एसेंशियली मतलब ये है कि जो ये मिथ है, अगर हम इनको आपस में भी देखें तो ये आपस में एक दूसरे को ही कंट्राडिक्ट करने लगते हैं, क्योंकि जो लोग ये मिथ बिल्डिंग कर रहे हैं उनका टैलेंट व्यास जी जितना टैलेंट नहीं है. एसेंशियली व्यास जी बहुत टैलेंटेड है. उन्होंने छोटे छोटे श्लोक में इतनी इतनी इंफॉर्मेशन लिख दी है कि किसी कम टैलेंट वाले आदमी के लिए वो चीज मिमिक करना आसान नहीं. तो अगर कोई और ये चीज लिखने की कोशिश करता है तो वो पकड़ में आ जाता है. तो अगर जो कीन ऑब्जर्वर है, जो जिसने महाभारत स्टडी किया है, अलग अलग वर्जन्स पढ़े हैं, उनके लिए ये मिथ, जैसे पिछले उसमें किसी ने पूछा था कि आप कैसे जज करते हैं कि मिथ क्या है और सही क्या है, तो ये एक बहुत अच्छी ट्रिक है कि व्यास जो लिख रहे हैं उसको आप अगर पढ़ोगे और किसी और ने कुछ लिखा है, आपको वो पढ़ मतलब अगर आप संस्कृत टेक्स्ट समझते हो, आपको पढ़ के डिफरेंस समझ में आ जाएगा. आप खुद ही बोलोगे कि ये दो अलग अलग लोगों ने लिखा है, ये सेम नहीं हो सकते. तो ऐसे आप अगर लेट से अगर 5 तीर वाला 5 बाण वाला भी अगर एग्जांपल ले, तो जैसे प्रांशु जी ने बोला कि जो मिथ बिल्ड कर रहे होंगे उन्होंने कामदेव के 5 बाणों से प्रेरणा ले ली होगी कि अगर कामदेव के पास 5 बाण है तो किसी और के पास भी 5 बाण हो सकते हैं. वो कोई और कौन है? भीष्म, जिन्होंने काम से मतलब पूरी जिंदगी दूर भागते रहे. तो ये एक बहुत ही फनी तरीके से आप कोई चीज बता रहे हो, लेकिन अगर आप उन्हीं चीजों को आपस में जोड़ के देखोगे तो वो तार जुड़ते नहीं है, वो कहीं से गांठ लगी हुई दिखती है. एसेंशियली हिंदी में अगर बोले तो आप मतलब एक कॉन्सेप्ट नहीं है, वो गांठें दिख जाएंगी आपको, और वो जो गांठें दिखेंगी उससे आपको पता लग जाएगा कि ये सही है या ये मिथ है. तो जैसे इवन घटोत्कच का आपने जो उदाहरण लिया कि बीच में जो मैंने वो वीडियो आपको भेजा था यूट्यूब का कि घटोत्कच को द्रौपदी ने श्राप दिया और हिडिंबा ने द्रौपदी के पुत्रों को श्राप दिया एंड ऑल दैट. अगर आप घटोत्कच के कैरेक्टर स्टडी करो तो वो आपको समझ में आ जाएगा कि ये पॉसिबल ही नहीं है. कि जब द्रौपदी वॉक भी नहीं कर पा रही थी तो फर्स्ट पर्सन हु केम, जो आया सबसे पहले द्रौपदी को अपनी गोद में उठा के लेके गया, वो घटोत्कच था. अब वो घटोत्कच ऐसा नहीं करेगा कि ही विल गो ऑन एंड इंसल्ट द्रौपदी, क्योंकि घटोत्कच का जो कैरेक्टर है, घटोत्कच इज ए वेरी जेंटल जायंट काइंड ऑफ कैरेक्टर. He is a big body, he is a giant, but he is not fierce, he is not ferocious in terms of like his demeanor. He is very calm, he is very gentle, and one thing is for sure, he respects the elders.
Karan would beg to disagree on the 14th night.
हाँ, वो रात में मूड बदल जाता है, एटलीस्ट दिन में नहीं है. तो बट घटोत्कच अपने एल्डर्स की बहुत रेस्पेक्ट करता है. घटोत्कच ने भीम को कभी भी डिनाई नहीं किया कोई भी चीज के लिए. भीम ने जब भी याद किया, घटोत्कच वाज प्रेजेंट. भीम ने जो बोला करने को, घटोत्कच ने किया विदाउट क्वेश्चनिंग. एंड भीम वाज समवन हु लव्ड द्रौपदी अ लॉट. So even if we tie these two and two together, it
Exactly.
Doesn't come across as something that is possible, right? Ghatotkaч would not do that to Draupadi, knowing that she was such a beloved of his father. So इस तरीके से अगर हम देखें तो जो ये क्योंकि ये आज लास्ट एपिसोड है हमारे मिथ बस्टर्स का, आई थिंक ये बताना बहुत जरूरी है कि हम लोग सारे मिथ कवर नहीं कर सकते, क्योंकि हर नए दिन यूट्यूब पे नए वीडियोस आ जाते हैं जिसमें नए मिथ्स आ जाते हैं। तो समहाउ हमें आप लोग को इनेबल करना पड़ेगा कि आप लोग खुद ही ये मिथ आइडेंटिफाई करें, और खुद ही वीडियो हो सकता है कभी आप लोग भी बनाएं कि देखो ये मिथ हमें मिला है और ये मिथ है, और कैसे ये मिथ है। कि अगर भीष्म के 5 बाण और घोष यात्रा की अगर बात करें, तो जब घोष यात्रा पर्व आप पढ़ोगे तो दुर्योधन का जो रिएक्शन था रेस्क्यू करने के बाद, वो रिएक्शन देख के दुर्योधन वांटेड टू डाई, दुर्योधन वांटेड टू किल हिमसेल्फ। वो आदमी कोई वरदान नहीं देने वाला किसी को, ठीक है। तो अगर आप वो कैरेक्टर को स्टडी करो, और एक अच्छी चीज है कि आप कोई भी महाभारत का वर्जन पकड़ो, ऑथेंटिक जो क्लोज टू ऑथेंटिक ट्रांसलेशन माने जाते हैं, दे आर वेरी कंसिस्टेंट अबाउट द कैरेक्टर्स। किसी में थोड़ा बहुत डिफरेंस होगा, बट कैरेक्टर्स का जो स्केच है, कैरेक्टर की जो आइडेंटिटी है, कैरेक्टर के जो मोटिवेशंस हैं, कैरेक्टर्स के जो क्वालिटीज हैं, वो किसी भी बुक में चेंज नहीं हुई, किसी भी वर्जन में। मैंने खुद 3 वर्जन पढ़े हैं, वेरी कंसिस्टेंट। उसमें कोई भी डिफरेंस नहीं मिलता। ऐसा नहीं होता कि दुर्योधन किसी एक जगह कहीं और तरीके से एक्ट कर रहा है और दूसरी जगह कहीं और तरीके से एक्ट कर रहा है। सो ये अगर आप लोग एक बार वहां पर, और इसको कर जानने के लिए कोई एक वर्जन, अनएब्रिज्ड वर्जन आप लोग पढ़िए, और अगर आप लोग कोई भी एक वर्जन पढ़िए, आप गीता प्रेस पढ़िए, आप केएमजी पढ़िए, आप बोरी पढ़िए, आप कोई भी एक वर्जन को पूरा डिटेल्ड वन, समरी नहीं, समरी में क्या है, बहुत सारी इंफॉर्मेशन का लॉस हो जाता है। समरी में जो इनफैक्ट जो क्रिटिकल इंफॉर्मेशन है उसी का लॉस हो जाता है। तो अगर समरी में आपको क्या होगा कि युधिष्ठिर वनवास गए, लेकिन वो वनवास में 12 साल तक वो इस बारे का लैमेंट करते रहे कि उनकी वजह से उनकी फैमिली को इतना सफर करना पड़ा, वो लॉस हो जाएगी इंफॉर्मेशन। तो आपको युधिष्ठिर वनवास गए, युधिष्ठिर की गलती थी, ये सब ये आपको पता है, लेकिन युधिष्ठिर ने कितना उसका पश्चाताप किया वो आपको पता नहीं चल पाता, और इसलिए आप वो कैरेक्टर्स को क्वेश्चन करने लगते हो, आप उनके मोटिवेशंस को क्वेश्चन करने लगते हो। अगर आप उसको कोई भी एक वर्जन पकड़ के आप उसको पढ़ोगे, तो आपको खुद ही आइडिया लग जाएगा कि कौन सी चीज मिथ है, कौन सी चीज पॉसिबल है, कौन सी चीज युधिष्ठिर कर सकते हैं, कौन सी नहीं कर सकते, कौन सी चीज अर्जुन कर सकते हैं, कौन सी चीज नहीं कर सकते, कौन सी चीज कर्ण कर सकता है और कौन सी नहीं कर सकता, आपको सब समझ में आ जाएगा। और ये चीजें रोज रोज आएंगी, नए नए जितना यूट्यूब और वगैरह में वीडियो बनते रहेंगे, ये मिथ्स के खत्म नहीं होने वाले। और मैं तो रोज नए मिथ्स डिस्कवर करने लगा हूँ आजकल। अभी रिसेंटली हमने वो कंस वाला वीडियो देखा था। तो ऐसे मिथ्स आते रहेंगे, हम उनको कंट्रोल नहीं कर सकते, हम खाली ये कर सकते हैं, अपने आप को इनेबल कर सकते हैं टू आइडेंटिफाई कि मिथ क्या है और सही क्या है। और उसका एक ही तरीका है कि आप एक डिटेल्ड वर्जन कोई सा भी पढ़ो, और अगर आप वो बिलीव करते हो कि महाभारत घर में नहीं रखनी चाहिए, लड़ाइयां होंगी, तो किंडल पे ले लीजिए डिजिटल लैपटॉप पे रख लीजिए, लड़ाई नहीं होगी, क्योंकि वो क्लाउड में स्टोर्ड है। होगी तो अमेजन, AWS, जेफ बेजोस के घर में लड़ाइयां होंगी, इट्स ओके, आई डोंट नीड टू वरी अबाउट हिम, राइट। तो आप क्लाउड में स्टोर करिए, गूगल ड्राइव में रखिए और उसको पढ़िए। लेकिन वो पढ़ना बहुत जरूरी है, और मैं तो रोज ही पढ़ता हूँ, सुबह 1-2 घंटे एटलीस्ट। सुबह उठ के 7 से 8 बजे तक मेरा यही काम होता है। So that is my only request. Deepak, over to you.
So we
Deepak,
can conclude.
just one more point to add
Yeah,
on to what he said. So, in with respect to contradictions and ironies that Pranshuji and Gauravji pointed out, even in the Vyasa Mahabharata, Bhishmacharya is very categorical in how he will handle and how he will fight the war. Just before the war begins in the Udyoga Parva, he clearly says, I will kill any prince, any king, or any warrior whom I face in the battlefield, except that it should not be a woman. And secondly, I will not kill Kunti's sons, as in the 5 Pandavas. I will not kill the 5 Pandavas. He makes it very categorical. And if Bhishma had any intention of killing the 5 Pandavas, he could have done it on any of the days. Why only on the 7th day or the 9th day that he reveals these 5 golden arrows? So the entire story of 5 arrows contradicts with what he initially says before the war begins. So that itself establishes that it's a myth that came later.
और भीष्म was a man of vows, right? तो अगर एक वाव ले ली है तो दुर्योधन के बुरा भला कहने पे वो वाव नहीं ब्रेक कर देंगे। अगर करनी होती तो सत्यवती के बुरा भला करने पे पहले ही कर दी होती और युद्ध ही नहीं होता।
वो उसने बेसिकली उन्होंने कहा था मैं एक बार कमिट करता हूं तो अपने आप की भी नहीं सुनता हूं।
वही वही तो वो ओरिजिनल थे वो। मैंने एक बार कमिटमेंट कर दी तो मैं अपने आप की नहीं सुनता हूँ। तो जो भीष्म ने
एग्जैक्टली।
कमिटमेंट कर दी थी कि मैं पांडवों को नहीं मारूंगा और मैं किसी स्त्री पे हथियार नहीं उठाऊंगा, ये दो कमिटमेंट उन्होंने युद्ध शुरू होने के पहले करी थी। उसके बाद भीष्म किसी की नहीं सुनते, चाहे वो दुर्योधन हो चाहे श्री कृष्ण हो। भीष्म किसी की, वेद व्यास किसी की नहीं सुनते भीष्म। अगर वही मैं बोल रहा हूँ, अगर उनको सुननी होती तो आफ्टर विचित्र वीर डेथ सत्यवती ने उनको कितना कन्विंस करने की कोशिश करी थी कि भाई ये अंबा अंबालिका है, यंग है, चाइल्डलेस है, तुम इनके साथ पुत्र पैदा करो या तुम दूसरी शादी करो। आप सत्यवती वॉज तो कि किसी भी तरीके से लीनियज आगे बढ़े, राइट, येन केन प्रकार वो चाहती थी, बट भीष्म डिड नॉट बस। तो अगर तब नहीं बस किए तो अभी दुर्योधन के एक रात में सडनली 2 मिनट के भाषण पे नहीं, मतलब इतना बड़ा मोटिवेशनल स्पीकर नहीं था दुर्योधन कि सडनली उसने ऐसा मोटिवेट कर दिया कि भीष्म को उनकी 100 साल की लाइफ में कोई नहीं कर पाया और दुर्योधन ने 10 मिनट में कर दिया।
आपने अभी सबको बोला है कि महाभारत डिटेल में पढ़े, दुर्योधन इतना वाइन करता है कि आई एम श्योर आफ्टर सर्टेन पॉइंट, हाँ बेटा मैं कर देता हूँ।
अरे भैया चुप हो जाओ। तो शकुनी यही करता है ना आफ्टर दैट, जब ये राजसूय यज्ञ से वापस आ रहे होते हैं तो शकुनी का लिटरली यही है कि वो मैं तो मर जाऊंगा, मैं तो जी ही नहीं सकता, मैं तो जलन से मरा जा रहा हूं, मेरी तो खाने पीने की इच्छा नहीं हुई। तो शकुनी बोलता है अच्छा ठीक है, मरो मैं कुछ करता हूं। मैं तुम
एग्जैक्टली।
इनको दूध पे बुलाओ। मतलब शकुनी का प्लान नहीं था ये, राइट। दुर्योधन मैं तो मरी जाऊंगा, दुर्योधन 5-6 जगह ये करते रहता है कि मैं तो मरी जाऊंगा, मेरे से तो कुछ नहीं होगा, मैं तो उनकी जलन से मरा जा रहा हूं, मेरे से तो उनका वैभव देखा ही नहीं जा रहा है। दैट इज व्हेन शकुनी सेज नो कि भाई ठीक है चलो द्यूत पे बुलाओ, मैं एक्सपर्ट हूं। युधिष्ठिर खाली बोलता है, खेलने का शौक रखता है, बट ही इज नॉट एन एक्सपर्ट। मैं उसको अच्छे से हरा दूंगा, सारा उनका संपत्ति जब्त कर लूंगा। करेक्ट। तो दुर्योधन की वाइनिंग से शकुनी तो कर सकता है, बट भीष्म करे मतलब थोड़ा डिफिकल्ट है।
राइट। सो
Okay, so with that, we come to the end of this particular myth, and it's also the end of this particular series on Mahabharata myths. But we'll be back with more series about the Mahabharata and about our great epics. And like Gaurav and Pranshu and Vijay were saying, that there are many other myths related to the Mahabharata. We cannot cover everything because of the lack of time. So we took 18 myths as a sample. 18, as we know, is a very special number for the Mahabharata. So during this course, we also covered other myths. So if you come across any myths, please do feel free to share it with us so that maybe in a future episode we will take it up, or on social media we will reply to this, because Gaurav through Sutradhar is already sharing
Yes.
a lot of
So
such myths.
in our app,
Yes.
we have started a series, weekly series called Mythbuster Mondays. So every
Yes.
Monday we release a video with evidences, and wherever we can find the original source where the myth originated from. So ये 2 से 3 मिनट के वीडियो होते हैं, तो आपका ज्यादा समय वेस्ट नहीं होगा। आपको 1 घंटा हम लोगों को सुनना नहीं पड़ेगा। 2 से 3 मिनट में आपको समझ में आ जाएगा कि आप क्या भ्रांतियों पे विश्वास रख रहे थे और क्या सच है। और हम उसमें पुस्तक के स्क्रीनशॉट वगैरह भी देते हैं, ताकि, और उसमें श्लोक नंबर और वो सब भी मेंशन्ड है कि अगर आपको हम पे बिलीव नहीं हो रहा है, क्यों करें बिलीव, मत करिए। हम जब आपको बोल रहे हैं कि आप बी.आर. चोपड़ा पे बिलीव नहीं करिए तो करिए, तो हम ऐसे कैसे बोल दें कि हम पे कर लीजिए। तो ब्लाइंडली मत करिए बिलीव, कि ना हम पे भी मत करिए। वो आप स्क्रीनशॉट पे देखिए, वहां पे श्लोक नंबर है, वहां पे पुस्तक नंबर है, वहां पे क्या सोर्स मटेरियल हमने रेफर किया है, सारी डिटेल है। आप वो पुस्तक जाके खुद पढ़िए। हम तो यही चाहते हैं कि सब लोग पढ़ें। तो अगर आपको लगता है कि इस मिथ के बारे में मुझे और जानकारी चाहिए, तो आप वो सोर्स मटेरियल जो हमने रेफरेंस बताया है उसको आप जाइए। तो हर मंडे हम मंडे मिथ बस्टर्स करके सीरीज स्टार्ट किया, और कब तक चलेगी पता नहीं। अभी हमने ऑलरेडी 20-21 मिथ का लिस्ट बना रखा है, 7-8 हमने ऑलरेडी रिलीज कर दिए हैं वीडियोस, और भी जैसे जैसे हमको आते जा रहे हैं हम उसको और ऐड करते जा रहे हैं। तो अगर आप लोग को कोई मिथ आते हैं जिनको आप चाहते हो कि उसका सच्चाई आपको पता लगे, तो हम उसको अपनी सीरीज में इंक्लूड करेंगे और उसके भी वीडियो बना के डालेंगे। और ये छोटे छोटे वीडियो आप व्हाट्सएप पे शेयर भी कर सकते हैं, ताकि अगर किसी और को आपके जान पहचान में इन मिथ पे बिलीव है तो आप उनका मिथ भी बस्ट कर सकते हैं कि भाई द्रौपदी was not the one who laughed at Duryodhan, for example, right? Very popular myth, and this essentially was the first one we picked because I believe that this is a very dangerous myth. And initially we are picking up the ones which I believe are very dangerous for the overall construct of our society, like jati pratha. Like the second one we picked was why the Dronacharya never refused education to Karna because of his caste, or Dronacharya did not refuse education to Eklavya because of his caste. So these are some of the myths. 2 3 minute videos you can share, you can download, you can share on social media, whatever you want to do. Even we have started uploading them on YouTube. So the idea is it should spread to as many people as possible. Or if nothing, let it encourage your curiosity to explore more. So that's the idea, and hopefully we will succeed to some extent in that purpose.
Actually,
Before
quickly,
we close, there is one question which has
yeah,
come on Twitter. So this is related to one of the previous myths. That was Sanjaya providing live commentary. So during that time, we were discussing that the war may not have happened for exactly 18 days. It could have been more than that. So one of the viewers on Twitter has asked that if we consider that the war took place for around 40 days and Bhishma survived for 50 days. The war started in Margashira and then it would have ended in Uttarayana. So how does this time calculation go? That is a question which has been posed, and I think Pranshu would like to take it up.
right. So one thing is that if the war had happened in 2021, March started on November 20th, and Bhisham Jayanti is on February 20th. It's 92 days actually. So if you take about it, if 50 days of Bhisham and 42 days of war, 92 days is actually, it would have happened if 2021. But no, that is not the right answer here. This is just a happenstance that this in 2021, the dates sort of match up like this. The idea why whenever Sanjay would go back and tell Dhritarashtra, so he basically okay. So there are four points. Okay, there were 18 battles definitely, because the 18 battles have been described. 18 and a half, taking the 14th night where the battle continued through the point. After the 10th day, Sanjay travels back 200 kilometers back to Hastinapur on a fast chariot, whatever, tells the whole story to Dhritarashtra, whatever time he takes to narrate it. And basically, Bhisham Vadh Parv has been written down in one Parv. Mahabharat, in the beginning itself, we are told that Mahabharat is written down over 3 years. Now, the scribe can be Ganesh or whoever was the scribe. Ved Vyas dictates Mahabharat for 3 years, 1080 days. There were 360 days was the year, Savana month, Savana year. And so 360 days, so 1080 Mahaparv for Parv for 60 lakh shlokas. For us, 100 Parv in the northern edition, 98 in the southern edition are preserved. Northern edition is 86,000 shlokas. The southern edition is about 103,000 shlokas or something like that. So that is, so even Vyas's dictation of Bhisham Parv takes 1 day. One Parv, Bhisham Vadha Parv. So basically, what we are looking at here is that there were gaps between the war and the battles. It might be on like even several other battles also. Now there's a conversation between between Krishna and Karna, which is actually put inside the Udyog Parv, where he says the war is going to start in 6 days. The war didn't actually start in 6 days. It takes actually, in the descriptions which on the chapters which follow, it takes more than 23 plus days. So now, how do we come up with an idea that it took 42 days for war? Balram leaves before the start of the war. Immediately before the start of the war, Balram leaves. Next day, the war starts. He comes back after his complete pilgrimage of 42 days, and he comes back on the 18th battle day afternoon to see Duryodhan and Bhim engage in battle. Balram has been gone away for 42 days. The battle has happened. 18 battles has happened, and that's where the 42 days come into the picture here. Now, the second part is why all this confusion comes through, because in Mahabharata, across the whole time, 4 calendars are used. The 4 calendars are described. There's a solar calendar, Saur calendar, Saurya calendar. There's a Savan calendar. There's a Chandra calendar, and there's a Nakshatra calendar. Each calendar has 5 types of years. The 5 types of years are described: Avantisar, Bibitsar. I'm not pronouncing it correctly, but those 5 constitute a yuga of that. A Saur yuga has 60 months. A Savan yuga has 61 months. The Chandra yuga has 62 months, and Nakshatra yuga has 67 months in 5 years. So that actually also is reflected when Arjun actually fights on Virat. Duryodhana asked the question, has 13 years happened? And Bhisham says, yes, 13 years already happened. He is actually talking about in all the 4 calendars. Other places, it's actually mentioned that 13 years, 5 months, and 6 days have elapsed. Because in Nakshatra calendar, 5 months and 6 days. Yudhishthir was going very, very correctly that he is following everything. Nobody can say, oh, I use the Nakshatra calendar so I can shave off, several months from my whole exile period. Yudhishthira did not do that. He went for the complete lesson here. But again, wherever the time references are made across Mahabharata, there is a problem because you don't know which exact time reference they're using. Gandhi was with Arjun for 65 years. After the war, it is said that 36 years after the war, Krishna departed the earth and then Arjun gave up Gandhi. So if Arjun gave up Gandhi for 36 years, that means he had the Gandhi for 29 years before that. So we have a time connection here. Kandav Prasth happened 29 years before the war. But in another place, when they are having conversation, Sanjay and Dhritarashtra says 33 years have elapsed since the Khandav one. But 29 solar years are 33 nakshatra years. Or the 36 years after are nakshatra years, and which are 32 solar years. So we don't know, but so we have this we have the numbers given at various places, but we don't know exactly how basically those numbers are corresponding to which of these months. So that's where again the next thing. When is Uttarayan? Uttarayan around 1500 BC used to happen around 17th to 21st December. Right now, Uttarayan is also 21st. But Bhisham Jayanti, which is basically when Uttarayan was celebrated at one point in time, it was 14th January. Another place, it is 20th February, because Makar Sankranti is sometimes confused with Uttarayan. Makar Sankranti was around 20th to 30th December, 3,500 to 4,000 years back. Now it is around 14th of January, and so we have actually a Bhisham Jayanti celebrated on Makar Sankranti because they think it's Uttarayan. So this is where the confusion comes in. The main point is that Bhisham was on Banashaya for 58 days. Now, if the war had just happened 8 days after, on the 10th calendar day, the Bhisham falls, and 18th calendar day, Duryodhan falls. On that 18th night, the Soptik Parv happens. Next day, Sanjay is sent. He goes, takes 2 days, gets Dhritarashtra and Gandhari back by the 21st or 22nd day. You have all the rituals completed for the people who have died and everything. Maybe another day, 23, 24 days have happened. Then Pandavas go to Hastinapur. There's a coronation, and for 35 days, Yudhishthira totally forgets grandpa. He comes back on the 50th day, and then they have this conversation. Now, and for 6 days, and obviously it's more than 6 days, because again, in both the Parv, Shanti and Anushasan Parv, it takes 5 days, 5 Parv, for Vyas to dictate their conversations. The conversation might have taken a longer period in that. So again, most likely what has happened is that the war period from the beginning to end, using Balram as our baseline here, was 42 days, and 16 days after that, basically, or calendar days after that, is when Bhisham expired, because it doesn't make sense that Yudhishthir would then abandon grandfather for 35 days, go away, and then come back. And again, we know that Vyas does it in 5 parv: apad dharm parv, dan dharm parv, rajdham parv, and then Bhisham, Sargarohan parv, right? So those 5. So he's dictating in 5 days. So obviously the conversation was longer, and actually it says somewhere that the conversation was at least 6+ days, 6 to 8 days. Again, also another point is Bhisham did not die on Uttarayan. He waited for Uttarayan, but he was also waiting for his grandson to come, and they have a conversation. And one of the things basically when you start going through that very voluminous, which is like 1.5 times the size of Ramayana, the Shanti Parv and the Anushasan Parv, that conversation is 1.5 times the size of whole Ramayana, right? Is the size of the whole Yoga Vasishtha. That conversation, if you think it, almost, right, 32,000 shlokas. It is around 28,000 in the Kumbkonam edition. Yudhishthira is actually asking these questions because he doesn't want his grandfather to go. See, the grandfather wants to now take a release, and this is where the thing is. Yudhishthira is actually continuously asking questions, so that till where he basically realizes that maybe it's time to let him go. But this is the time. It's basically those 7-8 days is this grandson trying to make sure, trying to just convince himself he should let the grandfather go. So this is another part of it. So when did he exactly die is not very clear. And so our contention that the war has to take more than that is because Sanjay did go back every time. He went back after Bhisham's death. He went back after Drona's death. He went back after Karna's death. Maybe he went back after Karna and Shali's death, because in the beginning of Karna Parv, the warriors who had died, he described some of them died on the 18th day. So maybe he went back 3 times here. And there is another big gap. When Abhimanyu is dead, Abhimanyu dies, they send for Subhadra and Uttara and Draupadi from the Uplavve. They have been left in Uplavve. It is 200 miles away. It takes longer than Hastinapur. Hastinapur is closer than Uplavve. Their headquarters were much more closer. Well, still 100 miles away, right? But the thing is, they traveled, and so that's why we have this big filler in between after Abhimanyu's death, where Narad comes in and talks about the 16 great kings and their those 16 kings charitra is described there. And so there's a filler there, basically, where another indicator, as we're talking about the various time indicators, on the 5th day is a full moon. On the 14th night, the moon rises at 3 a.m. Take any calendar, full moon night and the moon rise, you take the calendar through, 27 days have elapsed. Actual physical 27 days between the 5th battle day and the 14th battle night. 27 days have to have elapsed for the moon rise to be described that way, unless there's an error, and which could be part. It was copied over many years, right? The texts don't survive. We have a lot of rainfall. It's not the Egypt or something where the papyrus lasts for thousands of years and then it is dug up and you can still read it and properly. India, the humidity kills the books. You have to rewrite it. And there, it's not the Vyas again. It's not Ganesh himself rewriting. It's some copyist who is basically making a copy, and that's a human being, and human being make mistakes. And that's why we have 1,259 different editions, which the Bori, Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute, looked at 1,259 different texts to basically find what is correct and how to basically correct everything out to get rid of the copyist errors and everything. They ended up losing some shlokas. If you read even the critical edition, Vivek Debroy says that between this shlok and this shlok, 1 or 2 shloks had to be excised out, but they are correct. It's not as if they were wrong. It's just that we don't have a correct pronunciation or correct version of it. So they were excised, but their effect in the next preceding shlok tells you that, okay, he has shot some arrows. They have broken some things. In between, there's another shlok, which basically, if you look up Gita Press or KMG, the other information is given in there. So basically, there is a continuity. But that shlok, unfortunately, we don't have the perfect version of it, so they would keep it out and put it in sort of a like an appendix to the critical edition. So going back to it, the answer should be that yes, Bhisham was on Banshaya for X number of days. I would say 58 is is a commonly given figure, so we have to accept it. And the other part is that the war has to be longer because other things cannot match up. Your 13-day before the start of the war, the 13-day 13-day Amavasya, right? The quick Amavasya, right? So that's also very rare. And I remember back in 1980s, there was going to be another 13-day cycle of Shukla Paksh, and people were like, Dharmyug came out like, same thing happened before Mahabharat. Is a new war coming or something like that? So so it's a very rare occurrence. So unfortunately, the answer to that is like, if you just take this year, 2021, we have that 42 days, 92 days between the start of the Margashish and the Bhisham Jayanti, which was on February 20th this year. But that's not real answer. The real answer is somewhere between there.
So thank you, Pranshu, for such a detailed answer. I'm sure Ms. Ujjwala, who has asked this question, will be satisfied after listening to it. In case there are other questions, we can always interact on social media. So once again, I would like to say this is the end of this particular series, but it is not the end of our interactions with our viewers, because that will continue. We are going to start with a new series, and we are also going to start with a new podcast so that we keep connecting to the people and we have more such discussions. So once again, thank you all for joining us. We have had a great series. We have had a great episode with a lot of knowledge. Thank you, Pranshu, for being there from the beginning, for your sharing your voluminous knowledge. So this is a great occasion for people to learn. It's a learning process for all of us, because we can learn from you. And thank you, Vijay Krishnan from Bharat Narratives. Vijay is doing a wonderful job on social media. He's sharing posts from the Ramayana, from Vishnu Sahasranama, and he also puts up quizzes with photos from the Chandamama comic. So there are some very interesting and rare photos that he shares. So this is a good occasion for young people to know about our culture. And of course, Gaurav Sutradhar, he's a veteran in this field already, because he's there from some time and he has been doing a great job promoting our culture, our Indic tradition. And it's great that he has joined with us. So together we'll continue with more such series. We're going to go more in detail into the Mahabharata as well as other Puranas, and we'll be back very soon with a new series. And please do be in touch with us on social media. You can subscribe to our YouTube channels, to Gaurav's Facebook page on Sutradhar. So thank you once again for joining us, and thank all of you for being there with us.
Thanks, Deepak. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.